So, today we talk about XCOM and local strengths. And before we look at what I did, I want to already say Happy New Year. So, what did I do in the last hours? What I did is I refined the concept of local strengths. As a reminder, what local strengths means. Every time we increase the amount of agents in the mission of XCOM, we obviously increase the difficulty, but not in the same way. Because there are groups of enemies. And on average, those groups will contain a certain amount of enemies. For example, with 9 enemies, we have 3 groups, so the average is 3. 3 divided by normal 5 soldiers give a difficulty of 0.6 or 0.6 agents per soldier. With 10 to 12 aliens, this is the same because the group increase. This is also true for 13 to 15 aliens, meaning the strength theoretically stays the same over all of those ranges. But this is only true if basically time doesn't pass, because obviously if the timer kicks us in the butt, we need to move a little bit faster than we would have time on a, for example, supply convoy. Means we need to multiply the risk that we mapped out this. I mapped it out here in percent. And we need to multiply this times the amount of HP we have to kill, which is basically equivalent to basically XP gained, and therefore we can just multiply both those shots. In the end, I have divided the result so that this is basically our base risk. Means on a 7 to 9 mission with 5 soldier, our base risk is 1. And this is charted, basically both diagrams are charted on those two. Let's start with this diagram. This diagram shows us the version without the XP multiplied within. This shows a very linear relationship between XP gained and risk. But it also shows us that if we would start with 5 soldiers, this is not the optimal to gain as much XP as possible. We can actually decrease the amount of soldiers and still get the same amount of XP and the same risk. Obviously, the mission we have to do are way higher. This is, for example, 24 mission, also 22 to 24. But it's technically the same risk if there would be no timer. Then this would be exactly the same. But there is a timer, so we cannot use for most mission this diagram, but we have to use this diagram. This shows a much more exponential relationship or polynomial relationship between the XP we gain and the risk. Again, those two, the risk is very abstract, but here I refined it. And we see that we have this exponential or polynomial curve, which is the optimal curve to follow along. Because if you follow on any those strings and try to attach them, you will always have more risk for not more experience. For example, one good example is basically this point, because this is the 5 soldier line. Gray is 5 soldiers, and this is 7 to 9 aliens. We can see that if we want to have this XP amount, we can literally just go from 13 to 15 enemies with 8 soldiers, and we have more XP and lower risk. Means we are less likely to get injured, and we will get more XP. This just shows that all these strengths are not efficient, and that only this exponential function is the most optimal way to combine risk and XP gain. Therefore, I combine this to this graph, which is maneuverable by this here. This basically are the best values out of this graph to make this new graph. And also, let's put this completely away. I have refined the risk. So what we now have are the aliens we have to fight on a certain mission, and this will predict the amount of injuries we will get from that certain mission. So if we start with 5 soldiers and we expect that we get 1 injury every 3 missions, we get this graph. If we now fight 7 to 9 and we now look at how many injuries we expect, we also express how we should expect 1 injury every 3rd mission. Now we could make here a little fun prediction, because the other made the Let's Play where he basically did every mission with 4 soldiers, can now predict how many injuries he should take from this. If again here 7 to 9 on most missions, and we get as a value 0.66. So we can now take 0.66 and multiply it times the Let's Play. In the last mission I clicked through to figure out how many injured soldiers he had. So we multiply this by 14. This is how many Let's Play I clicked through. And if I don't forget to hit equal, we get as a number 9.3 whatever, and the actual number is 9. He got exactly at that point 9 injuries. So we predicted perfectly how much he should get injured by this graph and by just changing how many soldiers we had. Meaning we can pretty good predict the amount of injuries we should have. This is also interesting if we give higher numbers, like for example 8. For example, my mission, which I did, the under-infiltration one, we can predict here that I should have, if I played perfectly, I should have round about get like 1 injured soldier. So there was a lot of room up for me, but I missed it and did play poorly. What also we can see is that if I took 8 soldiers and I did a 16 to 18 mission, I'm supposed to get round about 1 injured soldier, maybe. Also basically 2 injured soldier every 3 mission. And I think that roundabout, mirrored in the mission. It felt exactly that way. That the hit could also be just evaded, but did hit. And I think that risk felt exactly like this, and that the risk here also felt exactly like this. And like I say, we predicted the risk, the injuries from the other mission. So we can see that this diagram here, especially the lower part, works especially well. I cannot say how good it works in higher parts, but let's be real, you will probably not redo an 8-man 54 soldier mission, but we can predict here a lot of injuries, right? On something like this here, 66 or 69, we should probably just get all people injured. But I find this graph very interesting, because now we can predict how many injuries we will take on doing a certain mission, right? For example, we did let's just assume there would be a timed mission, the troop convoy. Then we could assume that with 4 people on the 10 to 12 mission, we should expect 1 injury. Of course, if we do timed mission with a Templar, this doesn't happen, because the Templar is just broken AF and just stomped through everything. But on the troop convoy with much less soldiers, we got a lot more injuries, right? This is also interesting if this graph works always to then relate the injuries into how difficult the mission was in comparison, right? If we but take this diagram, then we could go like here, and we could say like, oh yeah, the risk was 1.25, which if I say this is 0.3, then it should have been like half an injury. And maybe it could have been done if the soldiers were all good, but the rookies were on the mission, so probably it's much worse. So let's say a rookie is like one soldier less, then it would be more likely death, right? And if we then take something like 1.3 multiplied times 0.33, which we expect, yeah, that says then still doesn't expect one injury. I don't know. It's weird to try to do it like this with rookies. But yeah, this is I think it's still a relatively nice estimation on how many injuries you will probably get on a mission. It will probably not be 100% correct because XCOM is a difficult and complicated game with a lot of factors that can determine the mission difficulty. Again, on the true convoy mission, I get 3 injured rookies. Maybe could have get a 1, maybe could have got a 0. With perfect play, it's hard to say. Right? If I, for example, just didn't run on the groups with that much distance and engaged them closer, maybe I could have gotten away without the injury. Right? Because after 4, you only should have gotten 1 injury. Which again, with that playstyle maybe was possible, so maybe it was just a mistake on my side. It is at least an interesting hint on how well you perform on the mission. If this is 100% true, which is probably it's not. But again, I think it's a good estimation. Yeah, I hope this was interesting for people. I hope this shows a little bit that especially under-infiltrating mission is especially effective. Like again, you can see here doing 13 to 15 enemies against a normal Civ 2.9 is just much more efficient. It has less risk, more XP. It just does so much better, right? So yeah. Yeah, I hope it was interesting. Have a nice day.